Perhaps you've watched the apocalyptic movie Snowpiercer. However, unlike the train that saved humanity in that film, the locomotive that we'll be talking about here could have unleashed devastation beyond our wildest nightmares. Its power is unimaginable, capable of bringing about catastrophic destruction on a massive scale. You might think that this train is just an ordinary locomotive, but it's actually one of the most dangerous weapons ever created. This nuclear ghost train is armed with 3 intercontinental ballistic missiles that are loaded with 10 warheads each. It has the capability to annihilate the entire east or west coast in a single blow, and the worst part is that nobody knows where it is on the vast Soviet rail network. In the 1960s, American intelligence discovered the locations of Soviet nuclear missiles through high-altitude espionage missions. This posed a major problem because if the Americans launched a first strike, they could potentially destroy most, if not all, of the Soviet nukes before they were even launched. With the Soviet missile silo locations already known to the Americans, the USSR's bargaining power as a superpower was at stake. The Americans had the upper hand with their navy, bases, and allies surrounding the Soviet Union. But Moscow still had an ace up their sleeve: their vast territory. While the US poured billions into flashy high-tech solutions, the Soviet Union took a more creative approach. In a surprising move, their ultimate weapon turned out to be none other than a simple train. This would level the playing field and restore the balance of power. In the 1980s, this ambitious rail project became a reality, and the world would soon learn about the end of the world train, the RT-23 Molodets. The Russians had always intended to keep this rail project top secret, and for good reason. The nuclear ghost train was a game-changer in the Cold War arms race, and the world was not ready for the devastating consequences it could bring. The Soviet Union had built it to resemble any other passenger train in Russia then, so the United States would have had trouble finding it. The combat rail-based missile complex was made up of 17 rail cars, including 3 modified M62 locomotives, 3 launch wagons with 2 support ones each, a diesel and lubricant wagon, and 4 rail cars to accommodate the crew. All of these rail cars were disguised as passenger or refrigerator cars, giving the train the appearance of a normal civilian train. Trying to hunt down this train would be like searching for a needle in the middle of a haystack. You would have to target almost any civil train in the whole USSR and still not have a guarantee that you would destroy the right one. The train was capable of cruising at an average of 80 to 120 kilometers per hour and could move at least 1,000 kilometers per day. In case of combat deployment, the train was also equipped to short-circuit power lines above and use this electricity if needed. Due to the size of the train and the supplies it carried, it could operate autonomously for up to 28 days. Even if the command was lost, this train could still launch the missiles and assure mutual destruction in a nuclear war. The idea of launching nuclear missiles from a mobile platform is not a new one. The Americans had a similar idea of launching nuclear missiles from 747s in flight. However, the Soviet missile train was different in that it used a new way of launching nuclear rockets, known as cold launch rocket technology. It's worth noting that most missile silos are designed for one-time use and rely on hot launch methods. During this process, the rocket engines ignite inside the silo, resulting in the missile's departure and the silo's destruction. However, with cold launch technology, the process is vastly different. Instead of igniting the rocket engines within the silo, compressed gas is employed to launch the missiles from the silo or container. This enables the main engine to be ignited only after the missile has left the silo. Furthermore, before the main engine is activated, course correction boosters are also triggered to ensure that the missile stays on its intended trajectory. During the Reagan presidency, the Strategic Defense Initiative was implemented to make Soviet nuclear weapons obsolete and give the United States a tactical advantage. In response, the Soviet Union initiated 2 large-scale projects, Topol and Molodets. These projects aim to transport and conceal their nuclear weapons from American weapons, since you can't shoot down what you can't see. The RT-23, a well-known missile platform, was developed into 3 variants, including the railway-based version. The other 2 versions were the silo-based and wheeled vehicle-based versions. However, the railway-based idea was abandoned due to its complexity, cost, and inability to meet all requirements. Instead, the engineers opted for the other two variants, which could be quickly deployed. The legendary Eugene Bureau, behind the Zenit rockets and a few other ICBMs, was tasked with developing the missiles. Interestingly, they even requested additional funding to develop the RT-23 into a carrier rocket for spacebound missions, but their request was denied. The trains of death entered service in the late 1980s, with more ground-based silos mostly built in Ukraine. The missile's lifespan was approximately 15 years, and after the dissolution of the Soviet Union, it was one of the first weapons included in the START treaties. All silos in Ukraine were destroyed, and under the program, the RT-23 trains would not be allowed to enter the railway network during peacetime. By 2003, the Russians began to decommission the trains because the missile's guaranteed lifespan was expiring. In 2005, it was officially announced that the missile complex was retired. However, the Russians began developing a new nuclear missile train called the WAGON, featuring the new Yas missile as the primary weapon of choice. The nuclear arms race also led the United States to develop a counterpart known as PEACEKEEPER rail garrison. But it was never deployed. In the event of a nuclear apocalypse, it's probably best to steer clear of trains. Until our next story.
Don't forget to like and subscribe for more amazing stories.